Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
What's up, you beautiful nerds? We're back once again to give you guys the straight dope on DMing or GMing. Yeah, that's what we do here. We're the Win with Dice podcast. Calvin, please take it from me.
Oh, sure, absolutely. The podcast, as Ramon mentioned, it's basically a GM tips and campaign recapping podcast where we talk about games we're in, games we've run, games we've played, as well as give off general information to take a casual approach to running tabletop RPGs to hopefully make it easier for people to hop on the other side of the screen. Just by, making it seem very casual instead of like a big, huge, insurmountable deal.
Yeah,
and
we're not trying to do a. I was gonna say we're not doing a lecture or like a TED talk.
No,
it's just
no,
some two bros chatting about the hobby. I mean, there's merit to that, but I like the idea of that. We're just two bros chatting about a hobby that we love and the games that we get to play in and run. And you guys can learn some cool things from real world experience of us running and playing in some games that we love.
Exactly.
That's the whole deal. So if that sounds good to you, listen to the rest of the episode and drop a comment down below and like and subscribe, because that's the way the YouTube works.
Yes, do all the social media things you know how to do already.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we've got a few things we can talk about today. We've got another Lancer session that we just recently did, and we wanted to chat a bit about some combat stuff. We could also squeeze that in and see how much we can get across. But first, we got to start off with the most important segment of the show, the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week, brought to you by Ramon and Calvin. Is now the official title of that section of our show.
I gotta take it back from you, Calvin. I gotta make it my own. This is my show now.
Oh, okay, sure. Hey, whatever right? Is less for me to have to do.
That's true.
I like not doing things.
Fair. All right, folks. This is the Win with Dice weekly GM tip of the week. And today I wrote something down. So, they say people can't change. But, here I am. So today's tip is actually kind of weird, kind of, I should say, I don't know, it was like epiphany, where it's like, in the game of tabletop RPGs that use a dungeon master or game master, we're all players at the table, except that the GM is the only person that is actually supposed to lose. Because if the GM wins, that means the bad guys wins, which means the good guys lose, and then the players lose, which means, I guess that's the end of that tale.
It could
right?
be. In a lot of cases, it is.
Yeah, it's obviously it's the closing of a chapter with those characters, and possibly, maybe there's ghosts involved, or gods resurrecting people, or
just all get knocked out and get captured, and demon contracts.
A scene change, the next season happening, but it's like it's so weird to think that out of there's no other game where one of the players has to lose, right? Where we're all everybody else at the table gets to win. So sometimes it's like you don't feel bad. My tip is don't feel bad if a combat doesn't go your way, or the players just figure out your cool puzzle really quickly, or you felt that character interaction and the players went up felt like it was too easy. As funny enough, players actually love that kind of stuff. They want a challenge, but also they want to win. And sometimes if things just go their way and the dice are hot, revel in that with them, man. You gotta lose spectacularly. So, there's gonna be times where they're down on their luck and, the dice aren't going their way that night, and there's a couple key mistakes they made, and, people are teetering the life and death, right? Those situations and moments are very important for the game. and they're gonna remember that for the rest of their RPG career, maybe their lives, right? They'll keep recanting the stories, just as much as those high times where someone rolls like 320s in a row, beheads the final boss, and has the glorious victory in one round. So don't worry about it. Lose spectacularly, lose hot, lose cold. It's all good. Just don't worry about losing, right? Don't get too into your head about if that went too good for the players, because karma's a bitch. And you're gonna have those times where you're like thinking, oh god, I need to get them out of the situation, because four jabronis sitting at a table is like something dumb's bound to happen.
Yeah, sometimes all your players are just sharing one brain cell. But yeah, definitely the losing spectacularly. I mean, how would I put this? Like, yeah, I've had some moments like that where it's like, I don't know if I made this too easy or not hard enough or anything like that. But so long as the players come out of it feeling victorious, I mean, I guess I could deal with losing. Another thing, actually, is for me as both GM and a player, is I like to be a fan of other people's characters. I like to see them do cool things because that's just fun for me, at least. I don't know if that applies to other people, but I think it's important to be a fan of other people's characters, even as a GM. So not to the point where you like make it super easy for them, but to the point where you don't feel cheated if they beat your encounter because you got to see that character do something cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a very specific moment where I think the entire team, except for maybe one person, just like executed a crazy maneuver to take one very strong monster just down in like that one turn, using all of their cool abilities to make it happen. And I was like, damn, you guys are crazy badass. Like, I didn't even care that fight was like, I don't know, like IRL, like 5 minutes, but like that was crazy. You just gotta like love that kind of stuff. You feel like the story you're telling about these characters is grand and is epic and it's gonna get to those places where the mythical places that all D&D campaigns tend to want to go towards. So
yeah, man. So that's the tip of the week. Prepare to lose spectacularly. All right, let's hop on with the meat of the show. So we did again have another Lancer one shot that we got to participate in. That was super fun, run by our good friend NHP Shaka, whose field guide to Mfecane I will continue to link below, because I want to keep shouting out that you described him as being a good storyteller last week, I think, and that definitely, if you were to read that backstory that was out there for this setting, you can definitely see that.
Oh yeah, the man is actually really good with words. It's intimidating a little bit, but it's also super fun to play in his games. If you ever had the pleasure to play in one of Shaka's games, you'll know that the man holds no bar with all of his storytelling and his characters, and actually he's really good at making you want to hurt a person.
Yes.
It's weird. Like his bad guys are bad,
yeah.
And I appreciate that. It like fuels the fire of like a good character, so I like it. Or just like a character who's like, I don't want anyone talking shit about me, so I'm into it. I definitely have a lot to take away from playing in his games, and we're not done yet, but last session was a blast, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to like give up too much of the story. I don't want to like spoil it too much, because I want people to be able to experience on their own if they run this for themselves, or if they are in another one shot or anything like that. So we'll try to avoid too many details. But we can say that there was some really great combat that went on. Just continuing on from where we were last session, where essentially we had to rescue someone. We were able to recover them, and we were just trying to make contact with, their people who they were from, while trying to deal with our own situation, as well as any other number of issues that were currently popping up at that time. Yeah. We did eventually discover that there were some factions in the area who were sort of acting unbeknownst to us. We did learn about one of them last session, and then another one this session. And these are two major significant players in the Lancer space who were sort of paying attention to what was going on here as it related to another larger conflict that we were sort of, caught up in the middle of all these different moving parts.
We're heading into some dangerous territory, and definitely being like blockaded, and we had to like fight our way through essentially.
We came to, and this was a pretty interesting scenario. We essentially were battling on the edge of a cliff, and in this particular situation, the goal of the combat encounter was for us to reach the other side of the map while dealing with several enemies in front of us, including one particular guy who was, like you said, he was definitely someone who we wanted to explode once we interacted with him.
Yeah.
He sort of interrupted some of our communications. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and coordinating around all this stuff, because it was very we're on a cliff's edge, and it was tight. There was lots of difficult terrain. Maneuvering was hard unless you're Duke who can fly, who just like not ignored most of the map, but like was able to maneuver his way all around the map without any issue. But the rest of the team definitely was slowed down. Especially our friend Spike, who made pretty far, but then just got totally bogged down in the center of the map, which was kind of cool. I think our team composition was really nice because Duke was able to do the thing that I wanted Duke to do, which was go straight, like punch into enemy lines and stay there as long as possible, kind of harassing people, right? Which I think Duke definitely pulled off. So, there's one thing about being kind of reckless in these games and just throwing your body forward. There's another thing about, being there and being stuck in and actually being able to hold your own while you're being assaulted by multiple enemies and stuff like that, right? So, which is pretty cool. I think our buddy Sunchild, played by our friend Joel, he was playing support, and he really kind of partnered up with Talon, your character, because you guys were the slowest, arguably. Not that, like, Talon's slow, but Talon doesn't move very, like, she isn't built to move very fast.
Yeah, which is surprising. I mean, the mech has decent speed, but my best ability requires me to, like, be immobilized. So, but I'm also a sniper, so, like, nothing's far away from me.
Yeah, exactly, right. It was just really just line of sight, which surprisingly, okay, so, like, I still have to command shotgun the map. It was, like, it felt like it was enough to be difficult to find line of sight, but open enough to still have lanes of fire. Like, sometimes you could chalk a map full of all these obstacles, and it's like, it's almost impossible to have anything but CQC combat, right? But this one, it felt like more of a tactical balance. It was like, if you were able to get up into the, like, even the opponents didn't actually want you to get to CQC, so they wanted to keep those lines of fire open and, try to like funnel all of the attacks in a certain way, right? Or all the our mechs into a certain way and get kind of bogged down in the center, which was like obviously by design. But yeah, it was cool. Spike, played by Corey, his mech is a Vlad, which I don't know. Vlad's kind of to me, he's like a weird place because, like, he's obviously like a frontline kind of assault mech, but he's also a little bit of a controller. And Corey plays Vlad like he's like an all-rounder essentially at that point, right? He has like some close range melee. He has his mid-range nail gun, and then he also, I think is like the most brilliant tech all the time is when you have that one anti-material rifle, because you normally just shoot it once at an enemy that you're like, oh yeah, that's like way too far away for me to reach, I'm gonna take the shot, which happened again, and which was pretty clutch and awesome. So yeah, it was cool. I had a cool moment where all of our mechs were basically spread out evenly across the map, and we're all kind of fighting in like our own different little zones and controlling the battlefield that way. So yeah. yeah, I love Lancer. It's so cool.
Yeah, Duke and Spike were up there. They did get slowed down by some high-tech mine weapons. Sunchild was providing some very, very muchly needed protection because we did have a normal squishy person on the field.
Yeah.
Because none of us happened to have a second seat in any of our mechs.
Yeah, and actually, to promote Field Guide to Mfecane a little bit, the Groot Slang, I think, is one of the coolest mechs in there. I think that the license itself, even taking a dip into it, because I think we're all, except for Talon, is using one of, like, a little bit of Shaka's mech design. And, the Groot Slang being a very big... imposing mech, but still being supportive and being able to give the allies overshield and protect them with with a big massive fuck you gun that just apparently deletes a whole space of stuff and turn it into deadly burning hellscape. That was pretty dope. But it felt really nice to have the synergy from it. I think a lot of support mechs, I feel like they don't get a lot of glory, so I always want to tell people yo, play that support mech and your team would appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
Right. On top of that, the Ibithu, I think I think I'm saying that right. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. But that mech is close to my heart. It's definitely the striker melee mech. You go in and you do what needs to be done with your bare hands or whatever, right? And we found out that it pairs really well with the Nelson, just like a one dip. I thought it was super effective because of the brace mechanic. Nelson has a cool armor locking brace that could also be improved on with the Ibithu's brace as well. And the Nelson is so fast that it could actually even still maneuver itself with its frame trait around even after bracing. So it's you're still able to have a little bit of maneuverability and still make a strike, even though the most restricting reaction you could take has been taken, right? I thought it was, I think the first time in a long time I really felt like I figured the game out a little bit, and I'm pretty happy about it.
Should we explain bracing in case people want to know what it means
to
do so?
Yeah. So bracing is a mechanic in Lancer where after the attack has been made and an enemy is done damage, you can choose to take the reaction that's called brace. So what brace does, first off, the damage that you're gonna take, you gain resistance towards it, so you reduce it by half. And then subsequently, all further attacks someone makes to you for your following turn on until the end of your following turn are at +1 difficulty. So your mech, you're in a defensive stance, your mech is shielding up or whatever, so it's harder for people to land a solid hit on you. But the drawback is that on your next turn, you're not able to move properly, and you only have one standard action, or quick action as it's called, one quick action. And you're not allowed to do any free actions. So you can't overcharge, which is a mechanic that allows you to get extra turns or extra actions. You can't do protocols, which usually are beneficial setups for all your moves. So you're kind of just stuck. But the Nelson trait allows you to, or the frame trait says after every skirmish or every attack, you're able to move one space. And because that's not moving normally, you're still able to attack and move. Couple that with the talent skirmisher, which says before or after a skirmish, which is the only thing that you can do pretty much with your quick action when you brace. You get to move 2 spaces. So with the core power on, the Nelson can theoretically move 6 spaces while braced with a strike, right? Which is to me bonkers that I can still move basically my entire movement actually while bracing. And that's actually, we found out a cool thing too, which I wasn't aware of, that if you brace on your turn, you can still finish your turn normally because the brace effect, restrictions, will only take effect on the subsequent turn. So, remember that. So if you're ever thinking about bracing, the answer is yes, you probably should have braced.
It is better than taking damage, but
it is way better. than taking damage. We'll for sure, man.
I mean, like, I definitely had a situation where I had to brace before taking some damage, and it slowed me down for a bit. It did throw off my turn strategy, because a lot of my stuff involves protocols. So it's cool. Like, again, what I like about Lancer is there's so much variety in the character builds, or the mech builds, I should say, that one person can just, like, they're getting hit, so they take some resistance to it, and normally there'd be a significant detriment, but you're still fairly effective. Whereas someone else, like me, it just totally slowed me down for a whole round.
Yeah, totally. I mean, to be fair, if you're getting hit, like, something has gone terribly wrong. I mean, like, there's 3 whole mechs in front of you, right? Like, the whole team's, like, should be in front of you or close, or, you know what I mean? Like, but, you know, if someone's gotten that deep into our lines, something's gone terribly wrong. You know, if I brace, I'm, like, literally surrounded, so that makes total sense. Like...
Yeah, like no one should even be looking at me.
Oh yeah, totally, man. And like also there was a cool, I don't know, like I love flying in games and stuff like that. My favorite character to play in Overwatch is Pharah. So, you know, I'm all about with that whole flying bit. So any game that allows me just to fly, I'm going to do it.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, we hopped into this combat. We got a lot of awesome stuff out there that we managed to do. I did some sniper shots. I got hurt pretty bad in this fight because I did have to. I think people who know Lancer know. I mean, I don't know if we've explained what structuring is, but if you watched our stream, you would know what it is. But it's essentially when you lose enough health that your mech undergoes some significant damage, causing damage to some of your systems or your weapons, or even more catastrophic damage, something like that. I did have to go through that. I also overheated, which was the first time that happened for me. I don't think I've played a mech where I had to really... Yeah, no, I never had that as an issue before. At least not to the point where I reached, the top of my... Because, like, with heat, it's sort of like you have a limit as far as you can go, and when you reach that cap, like, your mech will suffer some consequences. And I never really had a build where that was a particular issue for me. Anytime I got heat on my mech, it was always the result of something else, and then it would usually take some time to, like, stabilize and vent that. But for me, what my mech does a lot is I cause a lot of heat to myself with my weapons, and I was making some big risks trying to take down this one particular enemy, this one particular guy who hopped on our comms and was super annoying about it. So... You know, I kind of drew attention to myself.
Yeah, man. I always play characters that I'll always push it. Like half the time. Well, specifically Duke, because Duke's we're only running a license level 3. So like if we were license level 6, like I would have accounted for the Duke's pushing his engine, right? Like pushing the fusion core, right? So like he would have more ways to get rid of his heat. He would have a higher heat cap. He would have ways to get resistance to gaining heat. You know what I mean? Like I would take a bunch of dips to make sure that was happening, right? But you know, I can't. So most of the time, I think every combat so far, I've blown through I forget what it's called for heat.
Is it just overheating or?
Yeah, like so I always overheat my
overheating.
So I always like overheat my mech and you know take that core damage to my fusion core and you know all the time. I went in playing Duke like that. I'm like, yes, this will just happen and there's nothing I could do about it but beat the fight and then use my repairs to fix it later. Like
yeah, I don't know. Like I never. That was never like one of the risks that I took insofar as my builds went. Because like on the stream, I do a lot of grappling, so I'm up close a lot. And one of my previous builds was like very heavy, tanky. Hey, everyone hit me, I can take it, kind of thing. But I never really had a mech that was like, I'll put myself on fire so I can do more damage to someone else.
There's a whole mech just devoted to that crap. So the awesomeness of the Tokugawa, like the most anime protagonist like level of mech. I love it so much. I always try to I think every mech needs to be a little Tokugawa. Like, it's so good. But yeah, it's called reactor stress. That's what I was trying to remember.
Okay.
Reactor stress, right? So yeah, I mean, to be fair, like reactor stress, I think the reactor stress table is way less than the structure table. Because hear me out, right?
Way less
the structure
what? First
table.
off, like before you go on this, because this sounds interesting, but way less what?
Okay, like it's way less risky.
Okay.
Like rolling on the sure, there's in both scenarios. So in the first scenario, there's more likely for your mech to blow up, like in the taking reactor stress, than it is for your mech to be destroyed, right? When you're taking structure, right? Like mech structure. But I think it's more costly to take structure than it is to be overheating, because one, you lose a structure, so you're that much closer for your mech to fall apart, and two, it's very likely for one of your systems or one of your weapons to be destroyed, right? Like, and to fix those also costs a repair. So if you want to repair one roll on the structure damage table, you're more likely to spend 3 repairs than if you take the one roll on the overheating, because you'll likely only, like, if you're planned for it and maybe it's like a one happenstance and you might be able to skate away without rolling in any more tables for that encounter or that scene, you'll only spend 2 repairs to repair that one, versus like the outcome of the structure is probably 3. Yeah. Okay. So think about that. Think about that next time you want to brace.
I really hope we have a lot of people in here who are listening to this who like know the game well enough to know what structuring and overheating is.
Yeah, man. Because like the worst, I think the normally the worst case scenario that it can outcome is like you're impaired or you're exposed, which impaired is whatever. That means like you just take the difficulty. It's just like I think everything on their mother gives you the impaired status. So that's just like par for the course of playing this game, right? Exposed is a little bit trickier because that could really fuck up a lot of people, especially people who are big and slow. Getting exposed sucks because your primary thing is like your armor, right? And any resistances that you get, but you can't get resistances when you're exposed, and any little bit of damage you get over after subtracting armor gets doubled, right? I think if I do that correctly, I forget which stage it is, but it's either like but either way it's like it's gonna be tough on them. But for like fast characters with high evasion, like who cares if you're exposed if you never get hit, right? Like actually, so you can, if you're a fast character or has any abilities to just become invisible or untargetable, being exposed is pretty chill. Like everyone gets so freaked out about being exposed.
I didn't feel chill, and I could turn invisible.
But like, well, it was different, man. We were being rained down by shells, and shells don't care about whether you're invisible or not. AoE tax is like, lol, I don't need to see you to hit you. Like, so I understand, but like, you know what I mean? Like, dudes, if you're exposed, I think the exposed condition is scary on paper, but unless you're like, if you're good at not being hit, it's not that big of a deal. If you have ways to just get out of line of sight, it's not that big of a deal, right? If you can kill your opponent before it has a chance to really do that damage, it's like, psh, whatever, exposed. I don't care. I feel like half the encounters I remember playing a Lancer, I'm always exposed. And everybody gives me flack for it, but like, it's just a reality, right?
Whatever, man. Just do double damage to me. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm too much of a protag-kun to care. All right, it's time for me to win. Like,
fair enough. Yeah, I am still sort of learning my mech. I think last time I was a bit more. I had my head wrapped around it a bit better, as far as how my mech works goes. Because it is sort of complicated. I have to do like 2 or 3 steps for each thing that I want to do. I have to remember, like, I gotta activate this, and then that means I get these 3 things, and this one other thing, and this one other thing that I have to remember. So I've got like I started writing down like notes for my character because I do the same thing on the Untold Stories project for Mutants and Masterminds, because I play an archer character on there who has like a whole lot of trick arrows like Green Arrow, and I've got like almost 24 different kinds of trick arrows, and there's no way I'm gonna remember all of them because I'm very impulsive and I keep making new things I'm not gonna use. So I have a section in my notes that's just like, here's all the arrows you have, here's what they do. So when it's not my turn in combat, I'm just like, okay, enemies are standing close together. It's very hard for my team to hit them, so let me use this thing to make it a little easier for my team to hit them. And then when it comes around, it's like, okay, I'm going to use this thing. So I'm trying to do the same thing for Lancer, where I just like write down everything so I have it all in one place, because like CompCon and stuff, like it has everything, but then I have to like scroll to different sections, and they're sorted out well. It's just like not everything's in the same spot, and I need everything like right next to each other. But it did turn out pretty well for me. So
I totally get that, man. I think I threatened to make an Excel file for you that just has like yes or no questions about how your mech works. It's like, which one are you using? Like, like, you know, what's the final result? Like, you know, how much accuracy, how much difficulty you choose? Because like, you know, you're right. I mean, talent combinations with systems can really get a little tricky, right? Because you're trying to stack and destack a bunch of bonuses and like taking some penalties so you can do extra damage and all this foolishness. But like, I don't know. I think it makes playing the like, it makes playing like, you know, that sniper mech kind of feel where you're like sitting there and you're like, like you can even chalk it up to like, you know, you flipping some switches and like the reticles like lining up, and it's like all this time calculating accuracy and difficulties, and then, you know, you pull the trigger and we roll the dice and we see what happens, and it's like I think it's always, as weird as it sounds, it's like on other people's turns. Like sometimes you kind of gap out, right? You're like, oh, I don't want, you know, you everyone's kind of doing something else. But sometimes when like you're playing that sniper mech, specifically the Death's Head, it feels like because there's so many bonuses going up and down, you're like kind of excited to see what the hell is gonna happen. Because normally when that thing fires, it's like a big move, and probably the number's gonna be high, and then like maybe if you miss, you re-roll, you try to score that crit. And you know, it's always like a you know, a fun time for everybody to be like, oh, look at that 20, like I can't believe we did all that math just for you to roll a 20. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man, I like the feel of it. Just as soon as I can remember things better, I'm really gonna open up on that. But it's a whole lot of fun to do, and I got to get a pretty sweet kill in to make up for last time. Where I took several shots, and then I had to take some risks because I was really close to, I think I was pretty close to overheating again while I was I think I was still exposed at the time. Yeah, basically like I kept heating myself up, and then I had to overcharge, which did not help the situation. But I did manage to land a pretty good shot on one of the enemies who decided to open up his mech and start taking shots at me with his regular pistol as he saw what was about to happen, and I was like, yeah, this is satisfying.
I was pretty happy, man. Blow that guy away. Yeah, I know, it was cool. We also the overkill mechanic that they have, where it's like every time you roll a 1, you take a heat and you re-roll the die. Kind of got you a little bit. I think we figured we rolled a couple 1s in a row, and it was like, woof, that was pretty hot. Like, that was like, I think you got like 4 heat off of 1 attack, and it's because you rolled a bunch of 1s. And but it's cool because that means you'll never get the minimum damage. You'll always get something better. So, you know, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, we managed to get through that fight. Again, Sunchild's cover really came in handy there. And then we just sort of wrapped things up with our pal that we were carrying around. We did get a call that involved sort of different options as to what we could do next, which kind of involved taking a more direct route to a fight versus going to help rescue some people. We ended up going for the more rescue option. And I also did like a quick RP thing just because, I don't know, I want to see where I just like tugging on this thread, and I want to see where it goes, because my character has just taken some interest in one of the NPCs we came across, and is hoping to either help them or remove them, whichever is going to be up to that character.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think like it was pretty cool. I really do feel like we're part of the Loins Order of the Impy,
The War Order.
And it's like Impy War Order, the Loins Order of the Impy War Order. Is that what he said? I think so. Hopefully I did that correct. But yeah, like I don't know. It was one of those cool moments where I always say like I always hate the first session of things. It's always like really clunky, and you guys aren't always like a well-formed team, and you guys don't know what everyone does and their personalities and all that kind of jazz. But I think in the second session everything just kind of clicked, right? And it was just kind of like boom. Everyone got a cool RP moment. Everyone got to show off some cool mech action and do some combat, and overall it was a good session, man. Definitely excited for the next one.
I think it's going to have to be a couple of weeks before we play it again, but I will take that time to make some notes and hopefully come back stronger than ever so my turns don't take as long.
Yeah. Also, I'm going to do a Win with Dice secret second GM tip of the week. I don't know if that's the name for it, but
sure.
Yeah, whenever you're thinking, should I pop my core power? It's probably a good idea. Too many times people just save stuff in RPGs and they're like, oh man, what if I need to use it later? It's a fallacy, man. Like, if you see a situation and you're like, I think this is the time to use it, just use it. I know a lot of times people want to save their one and done kind of thing till like, boss fights and, those really serious moments. But quite often you'll never have the chance to do it. You'll end up at the boss fight and end the mission or whatever, that you'll just like, oh shoot, I never used my core power. Right? When, if you think about it more, like, you're saving the team's resources by using your resource. Like, a core power could be so powerful that you're able to basically just kind of handle the map yourself a little bit, that, you can save somebody else the trouble of taking a bunch of stress and heat by like just using that one resource. Or like if you see like a map or like an encounter design really kind of benefits from you popping it, just do it. Like, there's 4 of you guys. There's very rarely time where you would need all 4 of you to activate your core power all at once, right? So it's better to stagger them out, in my opinion. I might be wrong. To be fair, I haven't been playing Lancer as long as I've been playing other games, but I find it to be true. And I'm usually the only one popping my core power, and every time I do it, I never regret it. That's for sure.
That is probably good RPG advice in general. Like, don't save your thing. Use it when you get a chance to use it. But I know I for sure will never do that. So, I'm not gonna lie. I am the type of person who will save a thing forever out of fear of needing it.
Guys, it's such a bad idea. Don't do it, Calvin. You'll end Skyrim. You'll defeat Adjuin or whatever, and be like, shit, what am I doing with this? Like whatever the
Wheel
first
of
level. Yeah, or like fire potion or whatever, the fire resistance potion you got at like first level. You're like, I might need this for later.
Right? I should actually play that game.
Skyrim's a good game. You just walk around in it. You probably feel pretty happy about it. Just go into someone's house and just take their cake and be like, haha.
That's the kind of character I am. All right. Well, yeah. Again, another fun session. Do you have anything else you want to say on it, or should we go talk about some combat stuff?
No, let's go talk about some combat stuff. This is where I live.
Yeah,
this
man.
is my home. I love killing people with polyhedrons.
So, do you want to talk strategies, or do you want to talk about RP and combat? What are you feeling?
Let's talk about RP and combat. I don't actually. So, like, when you mean by RP, you mean like how combat is role playing, or how you can have role playing moments in combat?
Sort of both. Like, I mean, what makes combat not just you roll a dice, you add some numbers, you do those numbers to something else, and something else might lose numbers or gain numbers depending on whatever system you're playing. Like, how do you make it not just the numbers? How do you flavor it so that it's a storytelling device?
Oh, well, I mean, like, the same thing with like action movies, man. It's like the action scenes. That's what I think of combat. It's those high intensity moments of like, this character could be hurt, right? I mean, definitely. I think that it adds especially for games like that are basically, I would say, like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. They're primarily a combat game first, and then a kind of narrative story driven game second, because of like the amount of resources you have as a character to put bodies into the ground is vast compared to the amount of ways you can solve political situations, for example, right?
Right.
Your character is a monster killing machine, so you should go be killing monsters. But again, it's because of that, like that moment of like, my character could die, right? It gives like weight to whatever you're doing. It's like I could be, the fate of the country is in the balance if I lose this fight or something like that, right? So it was the context of like action movies too. It's like, I don't know, what was it, like Triple X always has to try and save the president, so he has to be in this shootout or jump out of this plane, because if he doesn't, the president gets kidnapped. Like, that's the reason why he's doing it. Right? So I think it's a good way to for the drama, to build the drama, right? And like in those moments of combat drama, it's there to happen, man. Like, get the highs and lows. Like, you don't know if your strike is gonna land like a critical. You don't know if you're gonna miss in a pivotal moment. Like, I don't know, the enemies might take you down. Like, it gives time for after a cool crit from a bad guy to give a little monologue saying how dumb the policies are for coming into my lair where I live and own all my shit, so I know how to defend it. That's always a good idea.
Yeah, those foolish mortals came into your realm, so you gotta mock them a bit.
Yeah, right.
That's just how it goes.
Right. But yeah, I mean, also, I think that like narrating a character's actions in combat is like half of the fun of playing these tabletop RPGs, is to have that cool, movie moments where a character is able to, like, you describe someone rolling a hit, right, or like like an enemy misses and then the other person's turn comes up and they roll a hit. So you could describe it as like, you're able to duck under the blade and you slide on your knees, you're able to slice this thing at its legs and it falls over, keels over, and you're able to kill the finishing blow. And that was like 2 rolls of dice, really, right? Like, it was like in IRL, it wasn't that significant. Like, it was, you did a little bit of math, but like in the story and the whole, like, I guess the imagination of the storytelling, right? It's like cool, right? It's epic. Right, it's like it's like when I don't know how to explain, like it's like there's those Greek myths or any sort of myths you hear about, like, I don't know, like Thor killing a bunch of giants, right? Like, you're not there seeing Thor roll those dice, but you definitely like hear the story. It's like, oh yeah, and then it's like you're never gonna remember that, yeah, I rolled that nat 20 or like that high number, but you're gonna remember, like, yeah, I ducked underneath that dude's blade and sliced his legs off or whatever, right? So
yeah, you're not gonna like, at the end of the day, the player isn't gonna say, yeah, I rolled a 17 and then I rolled a d6 plus 4. They're gonna say, I leapt up with my mace and I just landed it square between this guy's eyes. A mace doesn't do a d6. What am I talking about? But anyway.
Yeah, right. So definitely, I think narrative combat is where I am the happiest as a GM, for sure. I don't think I'm that great of a storyteller. I don't think I'm that great of like an RPer. But you want me to make a combat for you, I'll make a combat for you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes with that weight, that risk. That's harder. I mean, frankly, harder to set up in RP moments. Like, if players are just walking around or having casual conversations, like, there's no risk of life or death generally. But yeah, it does put that tension there. It does remind them, like, hey, this is kind of a dangerous world. But sort of, as we said at the top, like, you guys are heroic heroes, so you're very likely to come out of this as an heroic moment. But it's still going to be pretty dangerous because, hey, this thing's pretty powerful because it was made to be this way. In addition, I would say, like, both for GMs and players, it's probably a good idea to have, like, a handful of adjectives in your back pocket. Just because, like, I find it really helps to describe things, even if there's a point where we're just like going through turns and we want to like keep up the pace to make sure the combat feels fast paced. Like, you still want to describe things, not just glaze over them, even if it's you missing. You still want to find a way to do that. Like, I find it's a good way to boost the team morale overall. And the more that you as the GM or the player do that kind of thing, I think the more it opens up the space for other players to feel comfortable to do that, which is something that's important for me. Like, I want everyone to feel like they can just say and do whatever when they're playing these kinds of games.
Yeah, definitely. Would totally 100% agree.
Yeah. This is a smidge off topic, but it just kind of came to my head. Do you feel like any difference when it comes to describing combat when you're playing a home game versus when we're doing a stream game?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's mostly just like all the trappings of streaming a game. Because you kind of want to get everything right, because, you know, you don't know who's actually watching, right? It could be someone who's brand new to the game. So, you know, the game that you want to present is like, it's almost like a little bit of like an advertisement, right? Because I want more people to play, like, we're streaming Lancer, so I want more people to play Lancer because I love the game, right?
Right.
So I want to make sure I want to put out the best game possible and maybe do it like, you know, the best possible way, right? But for a home game, if like, you know, something goes horribly wrong, I'm not too beat up about it because, you know, the players understand that sometimes, like I said at the top of the episode on the weekly tip of the week, that, like, you know, they just want to kind of be badass or whatever, right? They want to just blow through stuff and feel pretty good and like powerful, right? Like they want to fulfill that kind of fantasy that we all want to do when we're playing these games. But it's different. I'm thinking about the audience, right? Like there's like me, my players who are also my audience, and then there's like the audience who is watching on the stream, right? Right. So I also want it to be entertaining for them. So if a fight just gets kind of washed out, I don't know if that's fun to watch, right? So, you know, I also, you know, I want it to be more balance, and I want to try and win a little bit harder and put a little bit more thought and effort into like planning moves or doing stuff. But, you know, I'm only one person, and several times players outthink me.
Been there.
You know, there's not much you could do with that kind of stuff, so you just kind of take it in stride, right? So yeah, I think that's the biggest difference, is like having that extra audience level of like, you have to also be entertaining for them as well, not just the people rolling the dice at the table.
I mean, it comes a bit with playing a game that, I mean, really any game that isn't D&D. Like, you have to realize, hey, people are going to be searching for, what is this game I've just now heard about? And they're very likely to end up on your space because you're doing such a niche thing. I think that's part of why we get so much like attention on our Lancer stuff. Because there are like quite a few people who would play it, but like it's not as big as like D&D or even like some of the Paizo stuff. I've certainly felt that way quite a few times on the Mutants and Mastermind stream, where it's like, because that's what happened to me. Like, I just wanted to see people play this game that, you know, I like it, but I don't see a lot of people playing it. So that was sort of where I was a couple years ago. I'm just thinking someone like that now might end up on there, and then I just want to make sure I do things right, you know, as well as making like whatever I do on there descriptive and entertaining. Although, you know, sometimes I mess things up. Sometimes I forget statuses of enemies, and it's super embarrassing because I was like, oh, I thought that guy was still trapped in a block of ice or whatever. Whoops, that changes my whole turn strategy.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of stuff. I think there's just like, you know, you're just human. Sometimes you make mistakes, and it's a little nerve-wracking having people watching and be like, that dude made a mistake, and you're like, stop, it's not a test, we're just trying to have fun. Like,
yeah, we actually don't get like a whole lot of that, really. There's some like, we can discuss things, but I don't think we've really gotten anyone who's been like angry that we messed something up, at least not to our face, at least.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You know, I hope that people aren't so mad about it, because again, it's like a book, really. Like, you know, when you read a book, it's out of the author's hands, like what you get out of it, right? I think it's the same thing for game systems and you know, our tabletop RPGs. Like, once you have purchased or acquired that like material, it's yours to do with whatever you want, right? So it's just, you know, we're just kind of like it's all kind of imaginary. We're trying to like, make believe that we're mech pilots and we're fighting a bunch of stuff. But the rules are there to give you that kind of structure to actually play a game, right? But it's not the end all be all of that game. It's all about the fun that you're having at the table with your friends. That's like the primary goal of that thing existing, on top of like making profits. Right? They want to make sure you have a good time and also make a buck out of it, so they can keep making sure that you're having a good time, right? Yeah. That's all they want to do.
I mean, that's real life.
Yeah, that's real life.
What about pacing in combat? How do you? Because that is something that I sometimes have an issue with. Like especially when I have like a whole bunch of enemies on the field and I'm running something. Just going through all of their turns is kind of a pain sometimes. Certainly more so when I was doing things where, because I used to always just like have enemies all go on the same turn. Right. Like certainly if I had the same type of enemy, like if I had a bunch of undead or something and then one other guy, I would probably have the undead on one turn and the other person can do their own thing. But then it would be kind of a slog to get through all those turns, so I would try to balance out like it not just being I roll the die, I get the thing, hey, does that hit you? Cool, move on. I would try to describe like it takes a swing at you and misses, or it hits you with its fist or its skeletal claws or whatever. I don't know, like how do you feel about trying to keep the pace flowing in combat when you have a lot of enemies or when you're trying to get through an NPC without slowing things down too much?
Reinforcements is probably your best bet for that. Like actually limiting the amount of bad guys on the field to being like a fraction of the total volume that you could deploy is like always good, because that means the players can always just be focused on dealing with what's in hand, like what's in front of them, and you as a GM will like, instead of deploying 20 zombies, you could deploy 5, and every time one goes down another one shows up, right?
Okay,
and maybe they won't get through all 20 zombies, or maybe every time one gets down 2 gets up, so it's that increasing level of, oh god, we need to finish this encounter fast or we're gonna get overrun, right? Then them actually just like, I don't know, chopping down like a forest of zombies. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So like you stat out your encounter, you figure out like, okay, this many zombies would be a pretty good challenge for these players, but then you pace them out. Like, I'm not gonna throw all of them on at once. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, right. You have a bunch of sarcophagus lining the room. Only some of them maybe at the one side of the room where the door, like the other side of the room where the door is, right? Not adjacent, but like opposite the door. They'll show up, right? Zombies show up. Party goes, moves forward, does their thing. Wizard sits back, or like the ranger or something. The artillery of the group, they'll chill at the back. All of a sudden, the sarcophaguses at the side open up or at the back, and all of a sudden, zombies from the other room comes in, and all of a sudden now the combat goes from being like, all of a sudden everyone's out of position, right? The players' backlines are being attacked. Instant like, oh shit. But they're only really facing 5 to 6 zombies at a time because people are downing zombies really quickly. But that kind of like extra bit of like, now I have to think about my positioning, or I have to get myself out of the situation, or trying to avoid attacks. That you don't even want to be grappled by these things, right? You want to just it gives everyone something else to think about than just, I guess I'll just move up and attack. And it's kind of like, if you think about it, it's kind of like the machine of your party is just chewing through things, going from one side of a room to another, right? That's how most things play out. But if you have reinforcements, you could change up that dynamic. You can bog them down in the middle. You can surprise them and being out of position. A good example was, what was it? So in Shaka's game, not to spoil anything, he just had some artillery show up, and we were like, we're so screwed, right? Yeah. But if those artillery was already on the map and accounted for, then Duke probably would have just gone up and dealt with them. But because they came in a position where I was still dealing with some stuff and everybody was kind of out of position, there was a moment where everyone was like, yo shit, we might lose. Obviously we didn't. That was a really tense moment, but I also thought it was brilliant. Like, so that kind of thing. Archers showing up out of like, portholes or something like that. There's like a wizard reveals himself and he's like, I was invisible the entire time, take this fireball, you know what I mean? Like, right? Like all sorts of crazy cool stuff. Keep stuff in reserve, man. That's always like a good idea, especially if you don't want to bog down yourself as a DM too, running like a big horde, because there's always like the fun of like having your players just chew through a horde of bad guys. But it's like, even if you think about like the classic fighting movie trope of like one man versus 20 dudes, he's never fighting 20 dudes at once, right? He's always only fighting one or two at the same time. And you want to have that feeling of like, if he ever slows down a little bit, he's gonna get mobbed, right? You want your players to be, if they ever slow down a little bit, they're gonna get mobbed, right? It's not all about actually mobbing them.
Well, that is good advice. I had not even thought about that. I'm probably going to apply that in the future, and it's going to give me the chance to throw some more enemies at my players, who still have a dungeon to deal with right now.
Oh, dungeon! Dungeon's a good place because you could always have the snowball effect of like things from other rooms showing up, because
why wouldn't they?
Yeah, right. People are like yelling, stabbing people, and shooting fireballs and stuff. They're gonna be like, "Oh crap, we're under attack! Like, let me go in there and see what's going on." Right? Classic kind of crap. Actually, a funny part, and I think a couple of years ago when Matt Koval's stream was on, their party was inside of like this labyrinthian dungeon. Like literally it's a library. It was like in a mausoleum. But at one point they ran into a gelatinous cube, and then they started to run away from the gelatinous cube only to run into a mimic. And then one of the characters was sandwiched in between a gelatinous cube and stuck to a mimic at the same time.
Ooh.
Which is hilarious because they literally just ran away from the one thing just to get, literally running out of the frying pan into the fire. So, it was hilarious. And, that kind of stuff happens all the time, and it's really funny. So, yeah, do that. I and all this stuff, I learned the hard way, too. I mean, like, I've definitely thrown 30 dudes at players and been like, that was a mistake for everyone involved.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's the point of the podcast, so we can tell people the things we learned the rough way. Yeah, I mean, I've done things where I've just like thrown a bunch of enemies at players, but I hadn't really considered it in terms of like using it to pace out combat.
Yeah, and like also too, man, like trash mobs are really good at assisting. You have a bunch of zombies there. Have them all assist one zombie in grappling a dude, and then they're gonna be in way worse shape other than all those zombies attacking them. I know that like you could fish for crits because you're rolling like 10 dice, but 10 d20, so you're bound to get a 20 eventually, right? You know what I mean? Like your higher chance to do it. But sometimes it's even scarier when like the dude is like literally grappled and can't get out of there, and they're literally surrounded, and all these dudes are just like on you, and you can really set into them how like these zombies are about to rip them apart, because it's like, and then all these fetid hands are gripped on you, and the one that's really close to your face, and that's terrifying. Why would you want to be in that situation, right? Like so it's always, I think it's always better to use like alternate combat stuff, like having a whole bunch of trash mobs try and disarm a dude, right? Like, or any of those cool things where it's like not directly damaging the players, but getting them into a position that's like not optimal, making them reconsider like, oh shit, maybe my teammate needs some help, I'd have to go and reposition to go and help them. Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say we could probably close off if it's any like combat tips and strategies. That is something I was gonna say is like, get a sense of what your players do and what they're bad at. And I mean, don't like punish them for it, but if you have an idea of they might be weak with this particular element, you can use that to challenge them if you find they're sort of mowing through your combats a little too easily. I mean, and otherwise, you can also still just change up your strategies instead of just like bluntly attacking them each time. That's something I definitely want to do as far as Pathfinder goes, because I would I don't know, I just want to mix it up a bit instead of having the normal just like attack a bunch of times, because that third attack is rarely if ever going to hit. I feel right. Like the third attack is basically useless, so I kind of want to mix things up. And there's some cases where it's like, I don't know, I have like a short bow or whatever, so I have to take an action to reload it or something like that. But stuff where it's just like, I just have this NPC swinging a weapon, I have to consider like, I don't know, what else can they do? And I'm not really sure yet. I'm sure there's a bunch of like skill feats or skill actions I can try. But yeah, that's definitely something I want to do, is just mix up what I'm doing in combat instead of just straight up attacking all the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Honestly, the simplest thing that you could do is just like move, right? Like reposition, man.
Mm-hmm.
You have a bunch of dudes. Like if everyone just moved up, made that one attack that's the best they could possibly do, and just move back, like in that firing row, it's weird because you can just have a bunch of dudes hide behind like in a corridor, right? I think what was it? Matt mentioned it because it was so Matt was talking about what Jim Murphy did. I think his name is Jim Murphy, I believe. Where he would have like basically like a shortbow machine gun. He would have like 8 orcs stand, like there's a hallway, there's 8 orcs standing behind in one side of the hallway and the other side, and they would just pop into the hallway, take a shot with a shortbow, and then move. And then you could just have all the orcs do that, and all of a sudden there's 8 shots at a shortbow that like the players are going to receive, but then they can't retaliate because all the orcs are out of line of sight, right? You know what I mean? Like, just pop in and out. Like, it's way more frustrating for a player having to chase an NPC down or like an enemy down than it is for them to just get wailed on. You know, just get out of there, book it, go figure out your figure. Like, that's why I like, you know, interesting combats are half the interesting combats we do is based on terrain, man.
Yeah.
Like, utilize the terrain. Like, think about like how you're you know, use those in Pathfinder, use those 3 actions, and Dungeons and Dragons, I don't really know how to play that game really. It's like movement or something. Right? Lancer, you know, movement or whatever. Just use that you know, terrain to your advantage and teach those PCs a lesson.
Yeah, about standing still. Definitely the environment, because you can change up like elevation, you can change up line of sight. There's one thing that Dungeons and Dragons does that I really like, which is layer actions, which is just like stuff that happens within the space you're fighting in on a turn. Kind of like Sentinels of the Multiverse, how they have the environment as a character, basically. I just really like that concept. Like, there's stuff going on that isn't under your control. And it's just happening in the environment around you. So you definitely, if you can, try to mix those things up, because players will then have to strategize, like, should I go, like, I one of the small rooms that I was dealing with in my dungeon, just like a set of stairs that kind of magically turned into a slide. But there was a space we could climb back up to the top.
Yeah.
So then it was like a matter of, like, do I move? Do I climb back up? Do I have line of sight on the bad guys? Which side do I go up? Because the one side is like this slick ramp now. So yeah, definitely you want to like change up the sort of battlefield you're using, like instead of just like a flat plane.
Yeah.
I've done some flat planes in my time.
Yeah, and you know, you never remember those combats, but like that slide combat, holy, that sounds hilarious. You just push people off of the top. That must have been like the funniest thing when it happened. Players would probably be like, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, they do have a good eye for traps, so I'm gonna have
like,
to
wait a
start my
minute.
trap game.
He's like, wait a minute, that tile looks, that GIF looks different than the rest of the GIFs.
There you go.
That JPEG is slightly off colored.
Yeah, it's like an old cartoon, and then there's one part of the background that's like colored slightly different than the rest, so you know it's about to move.
Oh man, so it's good. Scooby-Doo show is like that a whole bunch. You know something about to go down when one of the props is like in Technicolor. You're
Right.
like, oh.
I don't know. Anything else we want to say about combat, or do we want to wrap up the show here?
No, I think we're good, man.
Okay. All right, well, that's cool. Let's roll into the outro then. Definitely, again, if you're doing combat, as a GM, I would say just mixing things up in any way, I think is the key point that we would say for everything that we said so far. Try to mix it up a bit, whether it's like the number of enemies at a time or the space they're fighting in. You know, it makes it more fun for you at the very least by doing different things. All right. So that, I think, is going to be the episode for this week. You know, we got to talk about that Lancer game. We got to talk about some combat stuff. If you have some combat tips or tricks or things that have worked for you, or any just really cool combat stories that you want to share, just drop them in the comments below. Pop a like on the video if you liked it. You know, if it's a nice thing to do. And also, if you have not yet, because I know a lot of our listener base is not subscribed, why not hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, so you get a little notification whenever we go live with a Lancer episode or whenever we upload a new podcast episode, because you don't want to miss it. Additionally,
all these hot tips just
floating out there.
You might miss one, and then you're like, oh no, why I have my game? Why? It could have been so much better.
Right? Additionally, links below to all the awesome people that we know. The field guide to Mfecane, it's going to be linked below. You can check out the itch.io page and download it there. You get the PDFs, you get the LCP, put it in your CompCon, load it in your Mech, you're good to go. Also, shout out to the Untold Stories project, where I'm there every week playing Mutants and Masterminds, every Monday at 7 Eastern. Last week, I can finally reveal this, because I didn't want to spoil it, because I was wondering if it was publicly revealed at the time when we were recording. But last week, we had a super special guest on, Steve Kenson, the designer of Mutants and Masterminds, was on the show. And he was playing Adrian Eldritch, the former Master Mage of Earth. And we had some very dramatic conversations. I had to be a little drama queen because of some stuff that was going on with my character at the time, and I felt so bad being rude to this guy. But it was fun. He is a phenomenal RPer and writer and everything. So had a really incredibly dramatic moment. I don't want to say what it was, but if you go watch that episode, there's just one point where I am in complete shock. So if you want to see why that is, be sure to go check out that episode, because it was a whole lot of fun, and I am super excited for whatever is going to happen next, which will be on Monday, which is after we record. So I don't know what's going to happen, but by the time this episode goes up, whatever happens next will have happened.
Ooh, sounds fun. You guys should go check it out if you haven't seen it already.
Oh yeah. And check out all the other episodes there and all the other awesome stuff that they're doing on that channel, because they're doing a lot of really cool things. And Fallout is coming back at some point. So if you want to hear more of me playing games, I'll be over there. And I think that's about it for this episode. Ramon, do you have any final comments before we sign off?
No. I hope you guys are having a good day listening to this thing. I appreciate your views and your responses and everything about you, and I hope you it's good. That's it. That's all I got.
Awesome. Well, shout out to all the hopefully future GMs out there. Just remember to keep on winning with dice, or at the very least, losing spectacularly with dice. And we will see you next week.
All right. See you, folks.